Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today on workflows. Joining us today is Holly Kudel from Innovia Consulting. And before I pass it over to Holly to cover on this hot topic, I would like to remind you that this session is being recorded and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review and share with anyone. And we do ask that if you have any questions, please go ahead and type those into the questions box along the way, and we will get them answered during our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So now I'm going to pass it on over to Holly to kick off our presentation.
Thank you, Angie. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Holly Kudel, as Angie said, and I've been with Innovia now for just over a year. I had started in NAV back in 2008 in version 3.7, and then upgraded our company to 5.0, and then on to Roll Taylor in 2015. And when I was leaving, they were just beginning their process to migrate to Business Central in the coming year. And so I am very familiar with the different areas of NAV and really enjoy and have a passion for the program and working inside the ERP. And grateful for the opportunity at Innovia to now work in every version available out there with our clients. So our agenda today is going to be looking at workflows, the templates that are available, what the workflow model is, the components of the workflow, and then ways that we could use the workflow in our business each day. Here are some of our benefits and abilities with workflows. What they bring is some consistency. So setting up a workflow can bring consistency to a process. It helps us to do a check and balance on items. Great automation tool for different workflows and processes where we can automate some of that procedure from passing paper from person to person. We can pass that through an automation from one workflow to another and onto another employee. And we can use them pretty much anytime, anywhere. No one has to be in the building to monitor them, and they can work behind the scenes for us as well. So those are just some of the things that workflows bring to the table in an ERP and for a company when we utilize them. Workflows have been in the background in NAV since the beginning. Generally on the partner side, where you would have your partner set up a workflow for you and create the code for it. And in 2016, Microsoft very kindly decided to put it on the user side and make it a module that was user facing. And so in 2016, we saw them build out that platform that created automated demands and commands for this functionality. And in 2016, it included 20 out-of-the-box workflows. So from 2016 on, you have at least 20 workflows available to you right out of the box to set up. And so here you can see on the left are some of those workflow templates that are automatically in there for you. And some of the abilities that you have there are incoming documents, monitoring them, bringing them in with OCR recognition. You can create workflows to make that happen. Some of our ISVs on the OCR side do utilize those functionalities and those workflows. Continue would be one of those. ChargeLogic is another ISV that utilizes some of the workflows. If you're using ChargeLogic, you'd be familiar with when a batch settles, it automatically creates and posts your cash receipts journal for you on the credit card side, and that uses some of these very same workflows that we're seeing here. You can utilize the workflows for your sales and purchase order approvals, customer approvals. You can have it create a workflow to do notifications for when a vendor card or a customer card is updated for you. There are so many different ways that you can utilize and benefit from the use of workflows in your system. Then in 2017, they also added more workflows and templates out of the box, and as well created a wizard for you to create those workflows even easier. And so here's a picture of what that workflow wizard looks like. And so you would open it up just like any other wizard that you've seen in your ERP, and it will walk you through the steps to creating those workflows as well. Another feature that came out in 2017 with workflows was the ability to create approval workflows right from the ribbon on your Actions tab. As you can see here, in your master data. So for customers, vendors, and items, you can go right to your ribbon and create an approval workflow in the system very quickly and easily using that wizard as you go along. And if we have time at the end of our session today, I will do that as a demo for you. I will open it up in Business Central SaaS, and we will walk through that process so you can see where it is and how that does work. So there are some setups to consider. With the wizard and the templates being there, you have the components to get things set up and taken care of, but there are setups that will be required to make those workflows function. And so let's take a look at some of those. The three main ones that you'll see are the mail setup, and inside of your ERP, you will type in the search your SMTP mail setup, and it will come up. And if you have Office 365, this is a very easy setting. You can see it in your ribbon. You can just click on that and it will apply those Office 365 settings for you. If you're using Active Directory, you would set this up with the email and the user and password that you would like to use for your SMTP Office 365 setting for incoming and outgoing emails in your ERP. The next thing to consider is your approval user setup for notifications. So on your approval user list, you would click on the notification setup. This will bring up a box for you to set up those notifications, who's getting them, what is their email, how are they going to go out and receive notifications, be it email or inside the ERP system through that notification setup as well. Then the last thing to consider there for setups is your approval user setup. And so you'll see down at the bottom there, first is the user ID. That would be anybody who's going to enter an order, enter a purchase order, a sales order. If they were going to update cards for master data, you would list them as users. Each person would have either a salesperson or a purchaser ID code, which would go in the next spot. And then who their approver is going to be is the third one there. And so this is where you set up who is allowed to approve these orders, these changes to the system. Each person can have a limit. So you see coming up after that is either a sales amount or purchase amount limit, or you can check the box for unlimited. And so you could see the ones who are users have limits, and the ones who are approvers may not have a limit. They may have unlimited abilities, and they would have the checkbox. You can also set up substitutes. So if Chris is the approver, as we see in the first one, and Chris test is out, he can notify his substitute, and that would be put in there, that the substitute would take care of any of his approvals that need to take place while he is out. The approval amounts can be set by you and changed at any time. So if the first user is allowed to approve sales orders up to $4,000, they can release them without having an approval, and they will go right through the process. If they're $4,001 and up, then when they try to release, it will let them know that they need to send it through the approval process before they proceed. The same is true with the purchasing side, and if they're doing requisition amounts and request amounts as well. Those are the three main setups that need to take place before you begin to build out your different workflows. And once these are set, then you're going to begin to build out your workflow. My first suggestion is, if you're going to try this on your own, is to begin with one of the templates and build from there. Once you're comfortable with that, then trying to build one on your own with your own ideas going forward. So workflows in Microsoft Dynamics follow the IFTA model, and that's if this, then that, which is kind of the same as the code behind NAV and Business Central, is if this happens, then I want you to do that. And it's also the same with Microsoft Flow. If any of you are familiar with Microsoft Flow product, as a super power app out on the web space. It runs the same way. So there are three components of a workflow: the event, the conditions, and the response. So first, let's talk about the event. So what is an event? The first thing that happens is the if this, which is our event. So what's going to trigger that activity? So if I release a sales order, if I try to release a purchase order, if I change something on the customer card, if I process my charge logic submission to the bank and it's successful. Anything that's an event that happens as you're working in NAV or Business Central is an event. That's the trigger that's going to create the workflow as you proceed into your response. So first this happens, the event. So if I create a sales order, and then the response is going to be what's going to happen. So what is the action that's going to happen if I create a sales order? So if I create a sales order, and it's greater than $10,000, I want to send my manager a notification that there's a new sales order. Maybe it's an approval. Maybe it's a purchase order. And so we want to send that to the purchase manager and let them know that we just created a purchase order and it's above the amount I'm allowed to purchase without an approval. And so it will send a notification to that purchase manager, and they will have to click a button that says, yes, I approve this, and then it will be allowed to be released. So let's say I'm on the sales side and I decide my event is I create a sales order. When I hit release, it's going to send an email notification to the salesperson and to the vice president of sales that I created a sales order. Now, my salesperson on that order may like that he gets to see all the orders coming in that he's going to get commissioned for. My vice president of sales probably will not be too happy with us if he gets an email for every sales order that comes into the system. That's where the middle piece comes in, the conditions. So you always have an opportunity to add conditions. So if I want to send sales orders to my vice president of sales, but I want them to be, if they're large orders, more than 25,000, my condition would be just like a filter. And in the middle there, I could create the condition that says, if I release a sales order and it is more than $25,000 in value, then send an email response to our vice president of sales. And it might be because that vice president of sales would like to reach out and thank that customer for that order when it's a large order like that. But that would be how a workflow can work. Those are the three components: event, condition, and response as we walk through them. So let's look at those steps on our workflow as we're going forward. Here you can see some of, this is a template for a workflow on the purchase order. And this is what it would look like when you open up that template in NAV, and you would enable it by checking the little box next to enable to the header part on the left. And then down below you can see the three different components: event, condition, and response. And so again, you see there's quite a few there. So when this event happens, when a purchase order is requested, when there's an approval, when it's rejected, there's a lot to think about as you build it out. Here's the conditions in the middle. If those pending approvals are 0, if they're greater than 0, always do it, never do it. Those are all different conditions that can be used there. They're all drill down that you could see underneath. And then what is our response? So if this happens and these conditions are met, then here's what you're going to do: restrict the record, approve the record, delete the record, forward the notification to a new person, however that workflow looks. And yes, you can utilize these workflows to adding multiple people who would be on those approvals. So perhaps you have approver A approve up to 10,000. If it's greater than 20,000, then it needs to go through a second approval to approver B. And you can create workflows so that you use more than one approver as well as just one approver. So those things you could set up inside of these different templates. So here's a list of some of the events. So each of those workflow steps is an event. So inside of NAV and Business Central, you have what we call events. Those events would need to be converted to workflow events. There's two separate tables. So if it's not already listed in the workflow events, but it is an event in NAV, you can add it to the workflow events as well. But there is a pretty lengthy list of what is already available in that workflow events, and you could see some of them here. A customer record is changed, a sales document is released, an incoming document is ready for OCR recognition, which is one we talked about in the beginning. And there's many, many more. And those again are the events. That's how we trigger a workflow to begin. And then here's a list of our workflow responses. And again, some examples are releasing a document, asking for approval, restricting records, and also notifications are there as well. And you can do notifications when there's creating a journal line from a document, when we're sending incoming documents to OCR in the background, if somebody removes a restriction. Those are different things that can be responses as well. And here's some of the ways that we can use these workflows in our business daily. And so automating approvals on various documents, which is the very common one. And the one I suggest you start out with first, something simple, and then work towards the more difficult ones that you'd like to build out. Provide notifications and detailed updates. One of the workflows that I set up was so that if a sales order fell under margin and they released it, it sent the sales manager an email and let them know that this sales order is under margin so they can review that, make sure they really do want to sell that part to someone under margin or not. It became a very popular one. Our sales manager really loved that he did not have to worry about parts being sold under margin. So receiving invoices to approve an email. Automating your sales invoice posting after approvals, so you can go ahead and set up so that it auto posts in the background once it's been approved, and then processing those incoming documents with that OCR recognition is another one that is very, very common in this system. And now that I've walked through those different steps, what I do want to do is take a minute to just jump on line. Let's see if we can get into Business Central SaaS and show you guys those approvals. And I always suggest that you do jump in and try it in the sandbox or in your test environment and play around with them before you do deploy them in live, just to be safe. But definitely do give them a try. They are user-friendly, and so just playing around with them and trying some out and testing them out in your test environment, you'll get familiar with them and be able to do them on your own, come up with some great ideas of things that you can utilize those workflows for. So again, as I said, customers, vendors, and items on your master data, you can set up workflows right from the ribbon, and that's from 2017 on up into the Business Central versions. So here you can see under Actions, it's on the Actions tab in your ribbon. You could do it from the list or right from a customer card. So if you're on a list, you can select a group of clients that you want to set this workflow for, or you can do it for an individual client and set them up as you go individually. So here you would select create that approval workflow, and as soon as you select it, it will walk you through the wizard to get that set up for you. I've already done that on this environment, so I'm going to look at my managing the approval workflows because it'll show me what I did set up using that wizard. And so I just walked through the steps for the wizard, and it asked me what I wanted to look at, and I created it as a workflow. And so My event was when a customer record is changed and I set a condition. I don't want to know every time they add a dot or a T or change a phone number. What I do want to know, though, is if they change the credit limit to greater than $10,000, I want a notification. So if I was the accounting manager, especially accounts receivable, and they were changing credit limits and giving people greater than $10,000 in credit limits, I would want to know about it. And so we set up an approval for our customers. If someone changes that field to greater than 10,000, it's going to let me know. And so it's going to walk through an approval request. We set up approval requests, and then we set up a delegation that if I was not available, somebody else would take care of that in my place. So there's a second person involved in that. And it sends an email notification as well to my email address, letting me know that I have requested, that someone has requested a change in the credit limit. And so here you can see it's going to send it for approval request, and then it's going to create a notification letting me know about it. And so that's an easy way to try out a workflow in the beginning. Again, you can drill down on these and it's going to show you the underneath what's there. You can also look at the workflow steps up above. You can make some changes and you can add more lines if you want to add more information or more notifications or different triggers and responses to the workflow right within here as well. But again, it's just that easy. If I wanted to do more than one in SAS, I can check the little boxes. In NAV and Business Central on-prem, you can highlight the different rows you want to use and then go to Actions and Workflows and create that approval workflow, and then it would create it for the group of ones that you have selected. These other two, Trey, Holly, and George, would not be a part of that workflow. They would be left alone because we did not add them to the workflow. And with that, that's the end of my presentation on workflows. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to do my best to answer them for you. If not, I hope you enjoyed our session and that you do get in there and jump in and try some workflows on your own. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, Holly. If anyone does have any questions, now would be a good time to get those in the questions box so we can get Holly to answer them. All right, Holly, I think you nailed it.
Looks like we did a good job.
If anybody has any further questions that you would like to send in to us, please feel free to do so, or you can contact your account manager. Holly has her information up on the screen, I believe. You can contact her or your account manager. Either one is fine. But I just want to thank everyone for attending. And if you're attending on our on-demand, thank you for joining us. And we do have a few more webinars coming soon. Next week is November, and we have E1 Solutions presenting on November 5th. And on November 6th, we have Columo presenting. So if you're interested in either of those webinars from those ISVs, please register. And check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's innovia.com/events. And we also want to mention our podcast is going on. If you haven't heard of it already, it's called the Innovia Conversation. You can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page, and that's innovia.com/podcast. So check out the selection of those and subscribe so you can get notified when the new episodes air. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Holly, for presenting, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Innovia webinar. Have a great day, everyone.